Despite only reigning for a short period of time, King Henry V is considered one of the greatest, if not the greatest warrior kings. He is rivalled in this with Edward I, but Henry V managed to defeat the French in a brilliant victory at the Battle of Agincourt during the 100 Years' War. He ruled over England for a period less than a decade, but he was, even during his time, recognised as the heir apparent to the French crown. His marriage to Catherine of Valois united the French and the English throne, but Henry V was himself a very religious man. He suffered a number of injuries throughout his life, and people believed that he had been healed by God and that he had God on his side in his conquests against the French. But following his early death, which did shock many, Henry V's wishes for his remains after his death were harrowing and shocking. But what occurred to his body and corpse, and where is he buried today? And to support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. Henry V, throughout his early life, probably never expected to become the king, but his father, Henry IV, did manage to depose his cousin, Richard II. After his father was exiled, Richard II actually took the future Henry V into his custody and treated him well. But when his father came back to usurp Richard II, Henry then embarked in a career in the armed forces. He was commanding much of the English army, and he led forces against the Welsh, and he helped stave off the troops of Henry Hotspur Percy during the Battle of Shrewsbury. But at the age of 16, Prince Henry was almost killed as he was shot in his left cheekbone by an arrow. He was given the best care, and a wound that would have usually killed ordinary soldiers got better. He was treated with honey as an antiseptic, and he managed to extract dirt from the wound and was left with scars, but he did recover well. Henry continued to fight on against the Welsh, but he became the king on the 20th of March 1413 and was crowned weeks later at Westminster Abbey on the 9th of April. There was a huge snowstorm during this, and people in England thought it was a bad omen. Henry was a very tall man, and he was said to have had eyes flashed from the mildness of a dove to the brilliance of lions. And, as king, he worked on a number of changes to England, and he dealt with former rivals well and gave everyone a clean state. When he was encountering danger, he dealt with it well, showing that he was a competent and a good leader. He also ordered the use of English in his government rather than Old English and French, and he wrote in English. But with regards to his problems in France, with the 100 Years' War raging on, he needed to show his strength on the battlefield. Henry's best known for the Battle of Agincourt, in which he led the English army to a spectacular victory against the French. He was given the promise of the French throne after the death of the French king and was made the heir to the French throne. The brilliant work he did for the English against the French during the 100 Years' War would later be undone in the years after his death. However, on his deathbed he claimed that he wanted to live longer to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. The warrior king wanted to embark on a final crusade to the Holy Land. On the 31st of August 1422, whilst at the Château de Vaucancy in France, Henry V died. He was 35 years old, and it's believed that he died from dysentery, which he caught in the days after the siege of Meaux. He quickly succumbed to his death, and some historians claimed that he died from a different condition, or a disease such as smallpox. In France at the time, it was incredibly hot in the summer months, and Henry V was riding around in a full set of armour, and he caught a terrible fever, probably caused by heat stroke. However, he never got better. He would spend some time being carried around by those who attended on him, as he was so weak, and he could not mount his horse as he was so weak. He was then waited on for a few more weeks, and then he succumbed to his death. He had ruled over England for only 9 years, and despite being considered one of the greatest kings, he only ruled for a brief period, unlike some of his predecessors. He also never met his successor, King Henry VI, who was just a very young baby when he took the throne of England and also France. The body of the English king was then taken across the English Channel, and his brother brought the remains back to his capital. It had rested inside a ruined cathedral for some time, and the funeral procession was massive as the coffin was taken from Dover to St Paul's Cathedral. On top of his coffin was Henry V's life-sized effigy, which showed the king with a crown on his head and a sceptre of power in his hand. His coffin was taken to Westminster Abbey on the 7th of November 1422 for his funeral and his burial. It was a huge spectacle, and horses carried the king's coffin into Westminster Abbey on a chariot. Money was given by Henry V for a chantry chapel to be erected over his coffin and tomb following his interment, and the tomb was a large one too. It had a significant inscription around the side that reads, "Henry V, Hammer of the Gauls lies here." Henry was put in the urn 1422. Virtue conquers all. The fair Catherine finally joined her husband, 1437, flee idleness. On top of the tomb is a lifelike effigy of the king, which is made from silver, and other symbols are found on the tomb, as well as a lion resting at his feet, showing his power, that the most powerful of animals were under Henry V's feet. Some of the items used in the funeral procession, such as a shield and a helmet, have been stood the test of time and can be seen inside of Westminster Abbey today. However, there was a huge discovery made in 1953 regarding the tomb of King Henry V. For over 500 years his tomb and coffin had been sealed and had not been opened, with Henry being one of the few kings who was not disturbed in their coffins and tombs. But in the 20th century, the decision was made to try and open the tomb, and it's not recorded as for the reason for the investigation. His tomb was opened, and he had some work done on his tomb in the years following. However, it claimed that during the investigation work regarding his tomb, the remains of another man may have been discovered as sharing a tomb with the former English king. A small hole in the floor of the base of the northern turret of Henry V's chantry was discovered, and there was a cavity underneath. With this, the excavation of the remains of a man of 6 foot in height was found in a stone-lined grave, along with a crozier and a gold ring. The grave had been disturbed when the chantry was built, and these remains belonged to the Bishop of Norwich and close friend of Henry V, Richard Courtenay. Courtenay had been with Henry V in France and had died of illness at the siege of Harfleur, but then Henry V had his remains repatriated back to Westminster Abbey, and he was buried next to, if not within, the same tomb as Henry V. He was a trusted friend and advisor to Henry V, hence why he ordered his remains to be interred in the place that the king had probably outlined for his own burial. Some have considered why Henry V and Richard Courtenay were buried very close to each other. Some historians have speculated if they could be anything more than friends. However, this is unlikely. The bishop had died years before Henry V, and he had been laid to rest in a grave right next to where Henry V was buried, and the floor in the base of the chantry discovered Courtenay's remains. There was nothing inside of Henry V's testament and will that he would be buried with anyone. It was assumed that his wife would be laid to rest alongside him, but this never occurred, and Catherine of Valois' remains were actually subjected to a harrowing amount of defilement over a period of 400 years. But Henry V was a warrior king, and he was someone who for many years wanted to conquer France, and he would succeed in his determination to be made the heir to the French king. His son, Henry VI, did succeed him as the King of France and England, but he would be very young, and he never lived up to his father's high kingly standards. But in the years following, Henry V's reputation is one of being a brilliant yet ruthless king. But the mystery about the burial of one of his closest friends practically under his tomb is one that is less known about than his stunning victory at Agincourt. Thank you for watching, and to support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. And again, thank you so much for watching.